It's so weird. I feel like when I was starting my company, it was very much about like, oh, I was looking for talent. But now
Mm-hmm.
that I'm kind of 4 years in, the reality is I'm knowing that, oh, talent is actually not always going to book the job. So I'm actually looking for folks who are also similar to you guys in terms of like folks who have an entrepreneurship, you know, kind of vibe in terms of like not just waiting for me. Are they creating other opportunities for themselves? Are they someone who is a go-getter? Are they reading the trades? Are they reading Playbill? Are they on social media? I also want folks who can also collaborate, because I've also brought on a few people who just weren't good at collaborating. So at the end of the day, I think it's a partnership when you're working with the client. How do we work as partners? How do we support each other? First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
What's up, you guys? We're really grateful to have ChiChi Anyanwu on the podcast today. She founded Chi Talent Management in 2020 after an extensive work history spanning more than 15 years in talent representation, casting, and producing in New York. Her experience in casting has made her discover that her true passion was nurturing and developing aspiring talent, which she's definitely going to talk about. Her clients have been seen on Broadway national tours, MJ, Tina, Wicked, Ain't Too Proud, Sister Act, and Jesus Christ Superstar. They've been in films like Insidious, The Red Door, Honeymoon Friends, Mean Girls, the musical, Standing Up, Falling Down, Boogie, Vampires versus the Bronx, Men of Divorce, Master. Television, Everything's Trash, New Amsterdam, We Own the City, Alma's Way, Marvel's Daredevil, Luke Cage, Gotham, and Just Like That, Full Circle, Equalizer, The Deuce, Power, Book 3, Raising Kanan, Snowfall, Madam Secretary, The Cold, Deception, Endgame, The Godfather of Harlem, all the Law and Orders, Evil FBI. I mean, just to name a few, Elementary, Only Murders in the Building. She is, and what we really love when we talk about this, about ChiChi, is she's the real deal, in terms of, somebody who's started her own business, who's very entrepreneurial, who encourages her actors to be forward footed, to be visionaries, to be hard workers. And that's what she embodies herself. She does a lot of things, producing. She teaches at the New School. She's also does coaching. I mean, she's the real deal. I really, she's one of these people in the business that I really, really respect. I respect her grind. I respect her hustle. And she's so kind and really wants to help people. So she's fucking awesome. Before we get started, though, with the episode, I just wanted to ask you to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. And be sure that you follow us on your favorite podcast listening app, if you're listening there, if that's your preferred way to engage. And if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We read them all, even if they're bad. Lastly, before we start, if you enjoy Creative Risk, which I'm sure you do, and you want to dive deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. We offer 3 membership tiers starting at just $5 a month. As a member, you'll get early access to ad-free episodes, weekly motivational content, bonus full-length episodes, and much more, including a book club. Wow. But it's really more than content. You'll be part of you'll be part of a community that's dedicated to accountability and support, helping you stay motivated and inspired. So head over to patreon.com/creative risk podcast, sign up today, or just look at the description below. You'll see the link there. Okay, guys, without further ado, further ado, enjoy this episode with ChiChi Anyanwu.
We think the world of you. I was talking about you the other day because, I love Rashad. Obviously, I'm biased.
I love Rashad too.
But part of what I love about Rashad is also what I admire so much about you, which is there's, have more perspective, I would argue, than other creatives in this industry. So you are a woman of many hats in many ways, and in some ways I actually think that's like a fun place to sort of begin, is to sort of identify or talk a little bit about where it all did begin for you? Because obviously you've been in casting, you've been in producing, you're a teacher, you're also a talent manager, and you do your own consulting, which we may talk about a little as well. Where did your career start, and was talent management always in the cards for you?
I think at one point I was trying to be an actor, like many of y'all. I started off in high school. I did a lot of musical theater. I did a lot of community theater. And I just kind of fell in love with the arts. I used to run track growing up, and there was a time that I think I was injured. And there was also just a time that I was kind of just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I think it was like my sophomore, junior year, someone talked to me about musical theater and doing the musical. And, sad to say, we went to a very dominantly white high school, and they were doing Once on This Island. And someone made a joke, we're doing a Black musical, we need Black people. So I auditioned for Once on This Island. Ironically, I didn't get a part, but something happened that it was weird. I didn't get a part. I didn't get called back for the Black musical in the suburbs of Bensalem. Didn't even get called back. But here's the thing, someone had failed out in terms of they were getting like D's and F's. So they were on probation. So they had re-auditioned people. So I actually re-auditioned for it. And then I got Mama Yearly in Once Island. So I eventually got in the show. But it's kind of just like, why didn't I get called back that first time? But,
all in the memoir. It's all go to the memoir. All go in the tell-all.
That's why I learned that the politics of the industry is like, oh, it's who you're new to musical theater. No one knows you. I'm like, okay. So now, yeah, it is what it is. So, that's kind of how I first kind of got in the business, kind of just learning about musical theater. I was actually thinking about going to drama school. I was thinking about auditioning for University of the Arts. I was thinking about auditioning for Penn State. I think Temple also had like an acting program at that time. And then my sister actually went to Point Park for theater. So I was thinking about auditioning for Point Park. But then I kind of had a weird moment that I was kind of nervous and kind of scared. And I wasn't quite sure if acting was for me. So I actually ended up majoring in communications. I went to University of Pittsburgh, and I ended up minoring in theater. So I actually found out there are other careers I could learn about in the theater outside of acting. So I actually did an internship with the Pittsburgh Public Theater. I did a marketing internship with them. And then I also worked at this Black company called the Cutthroat Theater, and I worked as their kind of marketing consultant there. So I kind of found out like, oh, there are other things I can actually do in the arts as opposed to doing acting. And I actually kind of fell in love with the kind of behind the scenes world in college of acting through those internships.
And that's probably why you have then the diverse skill set that you do, that I would also argue is needed to brave this industry in so many ways, because we know, actually, I don't think Rashad would mind me saying this. I got some email from him, like tickets for a show, for like a dance show that he was the general manager of or something. And I was like, Rashad, what's this? He's like, well, I need you to book so that I can stop diversifying my income so much. But I'm just saying, because like it really, like we have hills and valleys in this industry, and it's those people who have those skill sets, or at least the curiosity and willingness to explore other things, that I would argue survive more than the average person.
Well, to piggyback off that, I think what's interesting too is that I think what's different right now, we've talked about this with like some casting people, like Amanda Lanker Doyle was talking a lot about this, but like there's the moving away from specialization as a concept, that like, oh, there's the casting, and then there's the actor, and then there's the right. And it's like, as we're moving forward, and I think with social media, personal brand in general, it doesn't matter so much what you do. It matters, what the brand is. And I think it's really powerful. And I think you embody that really well, because you do so many things. Why talent management though? What is it about, why did you choose management over, let's say, becoming an agent or management in general?
When I first came out of school, I did an internship with the McCarter Theater. I worked as a casting intern for Laura Stancic. I'm not sure if you guys heard of her.
Of course.
I worked with her for about 10 months. So I actually lived in Princeton. And the irony is, I knew I didn't necessarily want to do casting long term. I knew I liked it. I enjoyed it. But the thing that I actually most loved about my experience was actually talking to the agents and talking to the managers. And I just loved how they were so passionate about their clients. Even as an intern, I would get pitches like, do they know I'm an intern? I don't have any power, but they would pitch to me. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I kind of like the idea of also like the marketing aspect and the pitching aspect, and just having people who are kind of like, cheerleaders for the actors. So when I moved to New York, I found an internship at a small agency called
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
so that's
I?
my first internship.
Do I?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, that's right.
We've talked
Mike
about
used to
this.
be, that's right. Mike used to be with. So I actually entered. That was my first internship at an agency. And ironically,
Wow.
within 3 months, I got promoted to be an assistant. So I was there for about 3 months, and then I also worked with her for about like another 3 months. So it was about 6 months. But here's the
Uh-huh.
thing that I realized that where I liked working at an agency, but I didn't necessarily want to be an agent, was because she had a lot of clients. She had a lot of clients, and I remember there was a situation. I went to a party, and she didn't actually even recognize one of her clients at the party, right? So the fact that she had so many clients and didn't actually even recognize and know all her clients, like that was like, oh, that was like kind of like a red flag that, oh, I don't know, this is my lane, right? I love the idea of actually getting to know the clients and really pushing for them, but like I don't necessarily want to have too many people. So that was my first experience about like, oh, someone actually has too many clients. That was a bit overwhelming, but I liked what I did. What I did, I liked the fact that I was working at an agency. But I noticed that like with the agent, it's slightly different because yes, you're pitching your clients, yes, you're trying to negotiate contracts, but it didn't really have that kind of personal aspect to it.
Right.
So I kind of missed the kind of personal human element as opposed to someone just kind of feeling like a number, if that makes sense, or someone, you not being excited about this client because this client didn't make a certain amount of money, right? I felt like it was very much about the money as opposed to that kind of like personal relationship. But not saying
Yeah.
everyone's like that. Like I know some agents who are really great and they are very, very involved in their client's life and they actually want to advise and guide clients. But I noticed with managers, it's just a little bit different than from working with agencies.
That
So
makes
from
sense.
I actually went to a small company called the Cooper Company. So that was a management company, but it also she also produced in Broadway. So she produced Leap of Faith on Broadway. She produced I think a few other shows as well. So I kind of got a feel of like what it's like to be a manager, but also what it's like to be also a Broadway producer. So that was kind of cool to also learn the producing aspect of the industry. But I kind of knew early on that I didn't necessarily want to work in casting long term, but like management was like more for my focus. I really wanted to advise and guide clients and really help move their careers along, basically.
Yeah.
And how did that work? Working with those producers, the early experience in casting, even in management, how has that helped you as a manager specifically, and working with your clients and even working with other folks in the industry?
Yeah, just getting an idea in terms of like what folks are looking for, and even as I'm submitting clients for projects, I know like from the casting perspective, they're not going to bring in a lot of people. So even just knowing that, yes, I'm pitching my clients, but also just knowing the reality is that like, how's the acting reel going to stand out? How's this headshot going to stand out? Because they're seeing hundreds of actors. So I did kind of
Mm-hmm.
feel like it kind of helped me in terms of helping clients in terms of like branding, in terms of looking at acting reels and knowing like what are the acting reels that actually stand out, what are the acting reels that people are opening, what are the times that they're actually going to watch it the whole way through, and sometimes they're going to be watching it maybe like one or two clips in, right? So even just kind of coming from that perspective and guiding my actors in a way that they can really help have a good brand, as opposed to just having it be about, yes, you're a great actor, but also what is the marketing materials? What does the headshot look like? What does the resume look like? So I definitely think the casting aspect made me a better manager because I have an idea in terms of what the casting directors are actually looking for. So that's definitely
Yeah.
helped a lot.
Another thing that you're kind of talking about there, sort of, I think, like, that I'm picking up on too, because I've been thinking a lot about this, is this idea of being undeniable, like, because they're so busy. Everybody's so busy. Nobody
Yeah.
has time. Nobody has the capacity. So, and what I like about what you said about like, I know that they're going to see so many people, so I know the reality. So I'm not going to submit 10 clients.
Yeah.
I'm gonna submit somebody if I really think it could work out. And it's hard. It's hard, like in this like moment, or I just think in general when we're so short term sighted. And I just need a book. I just need the job. I just need da. Not to sort of just jump on any old opportunity, but make sure that when you are going after something, that it's undeniable. Because if you really push for something and it's not totally up to snuff, that dings something. That's something I'm sort of picking up on what you're saying too. Like in general.
Well, and ChiChi, you might, feel free to respond to this, but kind of dovetailing off of that, submitting people that are right probably allows for example, casting to trust you even more. and to
Yeah.
know, oh, if ChiChi is submitting somebody, we know she's done her due diligence.
Right.
This person is really worth considering. Does that seem true to you?
Yeah. And also, even though I'm submitting clients, I don't actually push for every single project. Like, for instance, yes, I'm pitching, let's say, how many actors for the parade tour that's going on, but am I going to pitch every single one, right? Because some people are actually good for parade, but like, who's like undeniable right for this particular role, right?
Jada.
If I
I'm just kidding.
Exactly. I love Jada and everything. Jada's also busy too, so I wish she could do the parade tour, but she's busy. But with that said, I'm also figuring out, okay, what are my client skills? What do I know that they're perfect for? And also, casting doesn't necessarily have time to pick up everyone's phone call, right? So knowing that if I am going to pick up my phone, it has to count. It can't be for every single project. So just really knowing the specificity in terms of what my clients are great at, what I think is perfect for the role, and not feeling like I have to, call on everything. So that definitely has been helpful, having that background.
Yeah.
Do you tell your clients no? Like, will you say, I'm not going to push on this one because I don't necessarily think it's the perfect fit? Or how do you handle those situations?
I've had that before. A couple of clients have been like, hey, I think I'm right for this, but like, no, actually based on the description, they're looking for XYZ, because I do have some clients who are kind of just like, they want to go out for things against their type. But I also know that like, we don't want to waste casting's time. So I can't necessarily, I know you think maybe you could do it as an actor, but like based off the description, they're actually looking for something very specific. So I do kind of have to kind of push back. But then I also have clients who just don't know how to, they don't know how to take no. So I'm like, okay, yes, I'm going to push you. Will I push them all every time? Not really, but I'll say I will. So
Right,
like,
right.
I can't, some people are just like, they don't really, but they want you to do everything for them. So I have to kind of like play that game every now and then with the clients. But I do have to be honest, and even with like, I love musical theater. So as a musical theater nerd, is everyone going to be right for Hamilton? Not really. Are you good at rapping? Are you good at hip hop? So because I also see a lot of shows, I have an idea in terms of like, oh, what's actually going to be perfect for the role. So I can't go to my client like, oh, you're going to be perfect for Hamilton. You don't actually know how to rap. You don't do hip hop dance, right? So I kind of have that insight as someone who's actually like a theater nerd who goes to see a lot of shows. I can give that feedback because I know the shows and I'm seeing it and I'm seeing what they're casting. So,
what is
100%?
What would you say? We asked this from all of our guests. I'm excited to hear your responses. What do you think your biggest challenge to date has been? How did you overcome it, and what did you learn subsequently from it?
I think the biggest challenge that I'm still kind of struggling with is actually not to take things personally. Like, I'm very invested as someone who's also, I'm a new business owner. I've only had my company for about 4 years. So everything that I do, I think in my mind, it's important, right? When I'm pitching someone for something, when I am, spending 8 hours out of the day, sending out appointments, whatever I'm doing, I feel like it's very important. I feel like my time is very valuable. But the reality is, just because I'm working hard for XYZ doesn't mean people are going to appreciate it the same way. For instance, I really thought someone was perfect for this one project, but there's like, oh, this is not the kind of work that I want to do. But this is also after I pitched the casting, after I thought that they were perfect for it. But the reality is kind of just like, I have to know that at the end of the day, it's my job to support the client, right? If the client doesn't want to go in for something that I pitched them for that I was excited about, I had to not necessarily take it personally, right? Because in my mind, it's like, oh, it took me that extra few minutes to pitch, get on the phone, casting said yes, and then the client still said no, right? So I have to know that at the end of the day, yes, it's a business, and yes, I'm working hard, but also I'm here to support the clients. And if they don't want to go in for it, I can't push the client to go in for things that, I want them going for at the time, right? So also not trying to take that personally is also something that I'm like, oh, it's like the human part, at the end of the day, I'm also a business person too, but I'm also a human. And I was like, oh, I have to not take that personally that they're not going in for something that I'm excited about, right? So that's something that I've kind of, every day I have to work hard towards and like not keep it moving and not kind of dwell on like, why is this person saying no to everything, right? Because here's the thing with theater, especially, people are a little bit more picky because if you're not doing Broadway and you're doing off Broadway and regional, there's not a lot of money, right? So a lot of times people are kind of just like, hey, I can only make a certain amount of money. I'm probably going to say no to a lot of these things unless I'm making, let's say, $1,200 a week or $1,400 a week, right? But in my mind as a manager, I know even from the casting perspective, they want to see actors who also can build their resume. They want to see folks who are also principal roles. And sometimes it takes you doing that regional theater to get to that Broadway contract, right? But I'm also working with a lot of younger actors who are kind of just like, well, my friend got cast in this 1 year out of school, or, this person's 23 years old and is on Broadway, you know what I mean? So they're also comparing their journey to folks who are making Broadway debuts in their early 20s, but the reality is that's not your journey, right? So I do have that experienced that people are just being very picky these days in terms of what the projects are financially, right? So that's also kind
Wow.
of something I have to kind of, it's real. It's real out there. Yeah.
Well, what's wild to me about
Yeah.
that, I mean, look, what's wild to me about that is, but look, at the same time, I appreciate, well, this generation, this is what's the generation after Gen Z, like Gen Alpha? They just don't, they don't give a fuck. They're
Yeah.
fearless. They really don't give a fuck. It's like,
Yeah.
I haven't
which
even
I
heard this. Is
respect.
that what they're called? They're called
Gen
Gen
Alpha?
Alpha? I haven't even
Gen
heard
Look that
about
up.
them.
Because
Me
they're
too.
like,
I
they're
know.
like, well, because they're gonna be the
Gen
ones who
Alpha.
tear it all down, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really fearless people, and I respect that. And look, I
Yeah.
mean, it's as an actor, it's nice to hear somebody, people have the part of my length, the balls, the ovaries, whatever you want to say, to be like, not be like, yes, 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 yes.
Mhm.
But it's just, but again, what's wild to me too is just what you're kind of laying out as expectations.
Yeah.
It's, if there's one thing that doesn't change, it's, look, you have to be delusional. We're all a little delusional. I mean,
Yeah.
you run your own business, which means that you have to
Yeah.
have a level of delusion too. We all
Exactly.
have to have it to get by. But
Yeah.
it's just crazy that it's like people, and maybe because I didn't work for so many years. Like if I get an $800 a week off Broadway contract, I'm like, of course. Is it great? No, it's not like it's like a phenomenal, but that I'm like amazing. I was doing, I was going out. The shit I've done for no money is crazy. You got what I'm saying. It's just wild how that's changing now. That's crazy to me.
You know what this is making me think about though, and I'm curious. I'm sure over time and specifically running this management business that there come these moments when you have to part ways with a client. And I know I don't think he'd mind me saying it, but like I remember a friend of ours when he did that a few years ago, and it was like devastating for him. And I don't even know all the logistics of why. And I often refer to, for example, like Rashad as like my brother. He's like family to me in a lot of ways. Per your point about the closeness of that relationship, when that happens, and when the decision comes from you, kind of talking about maybe you might, and I'm making up a scenario. You might have a client that's like, no, and you're like, okay, well, hold on, you're 3 years out of school, whatever. What is that like for you? What's that process, and typically, what is the decision, or where is the breaking point when you go, I don't think this is going to work anymore?
Yeah, I think the breaking point is kind of so when you know that. Because I actually, unfortunately, had to let go of one client, and I believe in her. She was also with a top agency, and I think she's super talented. But it came to a point that she also was also getting in her own way. And with me, I don't want to keep on. I don't know. It's almost like when you're in a relationship, like when you're in a romantic relationship. It's almost like you've done everything that you could do to kind of maybe help the situation, but like it comes to a point like there's nothing else I can do. Like you want to say no to a lot of things, or when you do go in for things, like you're not actually even putting your best foot forward, and when you feel like eventually it's just not growing, then it's just like, that's kind of how I part ways. Like, oh, this person had, and also I believe the person had also said no to something that was just like, they were literally perfect for it. They were perfect for it, like perfect role, perfect project, but in their mind, it was beneath them for whatever reason. And I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm working, it's been like 2 years. Also, no income has come in, right? It's also like, you haven't made any money in 2 years. I'm working hard for you, getting you into good rooms. And it's like, there's only so much you can do, and that's unfortunate. It does feel like you're actually doing, it's like a breakup. So I don't want to have to like part ways with people, but at the end of the day, it's just like, I can't do my job well or effectively if I'm continue to work with someone who's also not really putting in the time or putting that same work. So yeah, it gets tricky. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Okay, obviously, we don't have to say the name, but when that happens, I mean, we know how hard it can be. Did they take it not well? Probably.
They actually took it pretty well. I think they took it well, but they're also, sad to say, they also come from privilege. So it's also, I felt like it wasn't a big deal because the reality is she also was with a top agency, literally like top 3 agency. So in her mind, she probably could just get another manager. I think she did actually. She got another manager soon after I dropped her. Yeah. Still not working to this day, but and that's the irony too, because people also think like you get another manager and no, it's actually them. Like, no, it's actually you. You're not working. That actually doesn't actually matter
want money?
what team you're with. but you know, when you also come from privilege, like she comes from money,
That's
so
true.
she didn't actually need money because like she can actually be picky as well because like she comes from money, you know. Um,
100%.
but you know, but with that said, I will say even if it's someone who isn't come from privilege, you know, like you said, like you work with Rashad. Rashad's one of my good friends, and it does feel like your clients become your family. So it does feel like you're
Right.
also losing a family member. It is very just like,
Yeah.
oh, I do miss talking on the phone with that person, right? But it's
Hmm.
hard with me. I don't want to drop people. It only comes down to there's just no growth, you know, and that probably takes a couple years for me. I know some people who drop clients really quickly, but with me, like I want to at least give people the benefit of the doubt. I want to see like if there's even if they're not necessarily making money, you know, are they getting callbacks? You know, do I see the auditions? The auditions are getting better. Like it's not only about the money to me. It's really about like how are you growing as an artist? You know, is it longevity as opposed to, you know, the person isn't, you know, bringing income. I
Well,
really
that's a
have to
good
think about everything. Yeah.
yeah. That's a good segue to this next question, which is, how do you approach, building a career for your clients? And is that sort of what you see that you do, like as a manager versus an agent? Like you're considering more of the entirety of the client's career and their choices, and what decisions, where they should be spending their time and energy.
Mhm.
How how are you when you approach a person? What are you looking for? How are you strategizing around that in your head for what you see this person's trajectory is going to be?
Yeah, so it's really just kind of sitting down and talking to them in terms of what they want. You know, I never want to be the manager that's here to kind of tell you what to do. I'm giving my advice, but it's really about like, okay, what do you want and how can I help support that? Like, especially if I'm working with someone who's like a multi hyphenate, I'm
Hmm.
not necessarily a literary manager, but if I know my client is trying to develop their writing, you know, I could talk to them about spaces where they can also have a reading of their play. We could also invite people to come see their reading. So it's really about strategizing in terms of how do I actually give them the resources and give them the tools to actually create what they want, you know. And even if it's
Yeah.
someone who wants to be, hey, my goal is to be a series regular by XYZ. It's kind of like, oh, let's start to build credits, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, we can get you series regular auditions, but it's actually going to help you get the series regular if you actually build more credits, whether it's co-stars, guest stars, recurring. So it's also about like how do we set small goals so we can get to like the bigger goal.
Right.
And it's different for every client. You know, some people are fine with just doing theater. You know, their goal is to just do theater. Yes, if a television audition comes in, they're fine, but their goal for now is just to I want to be on Broadway. How do I build my credits in terms of getting to Broadway? You know, and some people also may need more training. You know, I have a list of folks who are acting coaches for my clients, so I'll send them to certain coaches, send them to vocal coaches. I also recommend like dance classes as well. So it's really about just kind of helping to support with some resources and some information for each person, I would say.
That's
And
awesome.
what qualities do you specifically look for in potential clients?
It's so weird. I feel like when I was starting my company, it was very much about like, oh, I was looking for talent. But now
Hmm.
that I'm kind of 4 years in, the reality is I'm knowing that, oh, talent is actually not always going to book the job. So I'm actually looking for folks who are also similar to you guys in terms of like folks who have an entrepreneurship, you know, kind of vibe in terms of like not just waiting for me. Are they creating other opportunities for themselves? Are they someone who is a go-getter? You know, are they reading the trades? Are they reading Playbill? Are they on social media? I also want folks who can also collaborate, you know, because I've also brought on a few people who just weren't good at collaborating, you know. So at the end of the day, I think it's a partnership when you're working with the client. Let's how do we work as partners? How do we support each other? You know, because the reality is like, hey, if you're putting out a dope audition, you're actually making me look good as well, right? Because people are gonna
Right.
know, oh, ChiChi has dope clients who are doing great work. Of course, I'm gonna bring them in, right? So it's also folks who can also work hard, put out those good auditions, who have strong marketing materials. When I see a headshot, resume, acting reel, it's kind of just like, how does that support the work that's currently being cast? Can I see that person working a lot? Because there's some people I see that are good actors, but it's also just like, oh, they don't really have a lot of work out there for them. You know, some people are very specific type wise that like, oh, I don't know if I see them working a lot, or I don't see myself doing good work for them because I'm just not seeing a lot of opportunities that fit that particular actor. So
Yeah.
even just kind of thinking about like, oh, who can I also work well for? What's out right now? What's currently casting? Can I see them in the industry? You know, can I see myself working hard with them and building a career with them? So yeah.
And kind of as a follow-up to that, because securing representation. You know, I have some strong opinions about this, and not even just opinions, what I'm seeing, you know, because things have shifted over time. Talk a little bit about the submission process. A, do you accept cold submissions? But B, what is the usual journey of someone potentially coming to work with you?
Yeah, so I do accept submissions all the time. I realize that like the reality is as a manager, we're not going to bring on a lot of people just because I have to know what I'm going to be able to, who I can handle. Because sometimes it's just like I have about 35 clients now. So it's also about if I'm going to bring someone on, can I work hard for them with the 35 people that I work with now? So I'm also always looking for talent, always open to the submission email. When I'm looking at submission email, it's really about like, do they have the materials that I'm asking for? It's a headshot, it's a resume, it's an acting reel. I actually get a lot of submissions that folks don't even send their acting reels for whatever reason, or some people don't even have acting reels. So also just make sure like, are you doing all the work that you're doing as an artist first before you get to me? Because sometimes when I see people, they don't really include in the materials. I'm just like, oh, are you doing the work? Why don't you have a resume? Why don't you have an acting reel?
Would you say self tapes are do you prefer an acting reel over self tapes, or what are your feelings about that?
I think self tapes are good. If you don't have an acting reel, I think self tapes, clips, but also not just clips for the sake of having clips, but clips that actually showcase your best work. Because some people also will send me clips. I'm like, these are not even good tapes, right? You're sending me clips because you have them, but like, is it a strong tape, right? And also just thinking about like what kind of artist that you want to be. If you're someone who wants to do a lot of procedurals like Law and Orders, FBI's, do you have anything that reflects that? If you're someone who does comedy, do you have any really strong comedy clips? So really think about like what's being cast now, how you see yourself, and how's that material support that. So definitely look for that in terms of the submission process. Yeah.
That's super useful. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious because we did a whole showcase episode where we talked to some kids from our alma mater who were
Do you have any School of the Arts people, ChiChi?
I don't. I tried, but you guys they're in demand. The School of the Arts, North Carolina, right?
UNCSA,
yes.
yeah.
Well,
yeah,
what's interesting?
You guys are in demand, so I couldn't. Unfortunately, I didn't. I don't think the books that I wanted. I think already were good.
Okay.
Well, what's interesting though is that we did this whole thing, and these kids were very surprised at the turnout in terms of who got and they were hearing, and I'm not surprised. The industry's retracting right now in a lot of ways. Do you think it's more difficult right now than probably ever to get representation in terms of like, because we've been hearing that, like I think only a couple of kids who graduated from that school got like reps actually.
Oh, that's surprising.
They got a lot of interest, but I think not a lot of people now, who knows, if they maybe were like just thinking about the big one. I don't know, but I from the impression we got was people did not get as many meetings as they thought they were going to get. Do you think that it's a tricky moment right now? What do you think is unique about this moment in particular?
It just depends. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like sometimes I don't like to make excuses because I feel like I hear that a lot. That it's a really hard time, but like at the end of the day, I do feel like talent is undeniable. I feel like if you're a strong actor, if you're good at what you do, I think people are going to want to represent you. So I just don't want to know. Yeah. I just don't want to use that. The industry is slow, and maybe because of the business. I think certain businesses closed down. I think A3 professional artists and a few other folks are
KMR.
Not doing KMR. Yeah, so a lot of major things, but people, I don't know. I'm hearing that people are always taking on clients, right? It just depends on like who you are. If you're musical theater, if you're strong at what you do, they're going to bring you on no matter what.
It goes back to that undeniable thing, right? Because I always hear this too, right? People are always like, well, I'm not taking clients right now. Okay, well, hold on. I bet you are if the person's undeniable and can slot right in. It's interesting,
Exactly.
Rashad, again, who's like family, I think he only has like 26 clients. And as you could imagine, there have been so many talent. ChiChi, he's never once signed with someone that I have sent him, and over the years I'm like, Rashad, this person is so good.
Sign with people that I sent him too. I was like, he's picky.
I know. It's so funny to me. But again, I guess that means I'm undeniable. No, but if the point is that we do tell ourselves that, like, oh, there's nothing out there, no one's taking anybody. It's like, well, instead of what I hear you saying, and Mike, we talk a lot about this.
Oh,
It's
of
like,
course.
well, what would make them take you? What do you sort of have to consider?
Exactly.
And ChiChi, even to your point about materials, you're saying, do you have basic materials? But you're also saying, do you have materials that represent where you could dominate in the industry,
Yeah.
where you could solve a problem for all of us and make some money and actually
Right.
work? And the reason I'm underlining this point is because I think there's probably a bit of a epidemic amongst actors in particular, where we're like, I'll do it all. I'll sing, I'll do Shakespeare, I'll do musicals, I can do film and indies, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, wait a second. What are we actually working with here? And where could you even find an entry point? And then maybe down the road, expand.
I like that one actor. I don't know if he's an actor or producer. The guy that mentioned that he knew his type right out of college, so he also just got cast in his type. I forgot who the person is that you guys brought on
our podcast.
On your podcast.
Clayton Howe. Yeah, the producer.
So that was really
Clayton.
cool in terms of like knowing who you are, knowing your lane, and it's okay to stick in that lane, because I do feel like folks are doing too much. I don't know what it is. Especially the young kids. I teach at the new school. I don't know who's teaching these kids that like they have to put in everything. Because now I'm just like, I don't even know who you are, because you're putting all these weird, crazy roles. I don't get these weird abstract roles that you're putting on your reel, right? But like, who are you? Who are you? What's the work that you want to do? What's being cast now? I remember one girl, we were doing the showcase, and she was picking all these roles for like people in their 40s. Like, oh, this is the kind of work I want to do. Like, you're 21 years old. Who cares if that's the work that like you're not 40 years old? So you actually should be doing something like what's Riverdale? What's Gossip Girl? Like, but she's like, oh, well, I don't like that kind of. I'm like, that's what you're going to be cast in, So I know you want to be this dark, dramatic actress, but like, there's not a lot of roles out there for that, right? Like, you're young, you're probably playing teenager for a very long time. So really like knowing what your lane is and like sticking to that, and not being like deterred because like, yes, I want to be like this person, but like that person wasn't there at 21 years old. It's actually going to be a journey. You know what I mean?
Well,
100%.
And you're kind of answering this, and this is a, because I, by the way, completely agree with you. If something is undeniable, it doesn't matter what time. One thing that doesn't change is the old is green. Yeah. That doesn't change. You know what I mean? It'll probably, maybe even if it's yen in 50 years and not dollars, which it probably will be. It ain't gonna change.
Yeah.
But I say that because, I completely agree. We are in a unique moment, kind of, though it feels like that way anyway, in terms of, the industry shifting. What are, as actors look ahead to the future here of this business, and when I know you don't have a crystal ball there, but it's like when you think about where this business is heading.
She pulls out a crystal ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually.
Yeah, little do you know. Every manager gets one of these. But, what do you think we need to be considering? That, like, what are the things that we really need to be considering right now as actors, artists, as we look to the future here, would you say?
First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there, because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person, So I do feel like, yes, it's great to have an agent, great to have a manager, but at the end of the day, it's also just like, how do you also manage your career and not feeling like you have to rely on outside people? So I definitely think every artist now, yes, having agents and managers are great. Sad to say, there's going to be a time that my clients actually won't need me anymore, right? They're going to be like, hey, I've reached the top of my career. Thank you for everything, ChiChi, but like, I'm good, and I'm actually in it for more about like, hey, I'm here at the beginning of their career. I won't necessarily be with them, when they're at the Will Smith level of success sometimes, right? But I'm going to be here guiding them and getting them to where they need to be at. So I do think everyone needs to think about like, how can I continue to manage myself? How can I find work? How can I actually build my resume? How can I also make contacts and network and put myself out there and not feeling like I have to kind of rely on actually anyone else but myself. So I definitely think every actor needs to really start thinking about that. And even with casting, there also might be a time that, sometimes casting directors, not every project hires a casting director. They may have someone who's a producer or a writer or director who's bringing in talent, right? There might be a time that folks might not necessarily even have casting to be the middle person, right? So at the end of the day, like, are you making contacts with people who are also developing work? Are you making contacts with the producers? Are you putting yourself out there? So I definitely think in terms of the future, everyone really has to think from that business mindset. And I do definitely think it's still about who you know in the industry. Because I know that there are certain cast members that they know my name. Because they know my name, my clients are always going to go on for this project because they know my name. And other cast members that might not necessarily know who I am, it's going to be harder for me to pitch. And that's just what it is. So if you don't necessarily want to have to feel like you have to rely on having a manager or agent, how can you start making relationships with casting? How can you start making relationships with outside folks who are creating those opportunities? So hopefully that's things that people are doing now. And I just think the future is going to be it's going to be less about all these other middle people and more about like, how can we really get to the talent as opposed to going through all these people. Cause I do feel like
Wow.
there's going to be a time, no, sad to say, like, I think there's going to be a time in the industry that they might not necessarily need us as much. They might not necessarily need an agent as much. They might not necessarily need a manager as much. But how can you also focus on, getting yourself out there so you don't have to go through all these channels? So that
Well,
actually I feel like might be the future.
what's interesting about that? I never thought about that, but you know what's so you're probably right about that because if I want anything, I get ads all the time. I open my phone, it knows what I want. You know, there's no shortage, I would argue, of people who can do X thing that somebody needs them to do. I need the next
Yeah.
ingenue for my horror movie. I need the next, there is, because we live in an incredibly accessible era where everything is at our fingertips that we would
Yeah.
want. And people are, on the whole, able to promote and market themselves for. It probably will just be about who you know and staying top of mind. It really
Yeah.
will just be about, like, because I won't have to put out a submission report for people because, excuse me, I won't have to put out a breakdown to look for this part because probably technology, like I'm always seeing actors and things on my social media or what, it's like, so I won't even have to go through that whole process. I could just call in the people I need to. I won't even need to go to cast. I won't even need to hire a casting person.
Mm-hmm.
You're so right. I never even thought about that. Is that probably with this more democratic sort of wide open playing field? And it's not to say, look, here's what, of course those positions are needed because what you do that's very special is that you may take somebody who does not have that exposure, that sort of brand awareness, and you're trying to help build that brand awareness for them, and they could be a diamond in the rough or a hidden gem out there. Same thing with casting. Casting knows people who aren't as tip of the tongue, tip of the fingertips. They can advocate for people if they're just trying to bring in people who, well, I could have called X person, I know them. But if, like, what's special about the quote middlemen is that their job is to sort of find these jewels out
Yeah.
there. But it makes sense that as we're moving to a more AI driven, proficient, efficient sort of, moment, that, sad to say, but you're right, that may not be as needed. And
Yeah.
it puts, per your point, all the more impetus on us to self-manage. I love that you use that word. So many distractions, so many, we live in a chaotic political moment, everything's fucking crazy. And how do
Yeah.
you stay focused? How do you manage yourself? How do you manage yourself, stay the course as this business is getting harder? I'm just rambling now, but I love all
Well,
those things.
one of the things I really want to lift up, because it actually means a lot to me, ChiChi, that you just sort of said, and it I can't let it go unacknowledged. You've probably heard me very vocally say that I do think a lot of times actors in particular are gaslit in this industry and somehow like held back.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes, here's a really micro example, when it comes to building their own relationships, especially with casting. And there are times, for example, like when working with Rashad, where I'll say like, actually, I want to pitch myself for this because it's important to me that I either continue to grow this direct relationship for us, right? This is not just about me, but like for us. And I want to use it to pivot to a question about self-pitching, or at least that dynamic of building relationships with casting, because just to lift up again your acknowledgement that it is in the actors, and again, I would argue everyone else, the rest of their team's benefit, to continue to forge the relationships and not wholly depend on a singular person, to pave the way. I just don't think actors believe that enough and are told so much otherwise. And I honestly believe, and this is what I think you are, a really, excuse my language, but fucking great entrepreneur yourself, is because you see the future. And the creatives in this industry that see the future understand exactly what we're talking about, that we're not doing business like it's 1990 anymore. We're doing business in a moment and we're looking towards the future. So just to really lift that up. But what are your thoughts on actors, especially clients that you might rep, self-pitching directly to casting or other creatives for a project? And is there an art to it, in your opinion?
I love when people self-pitch. Because I feel like I could tag team off of that. For instance, I had a couple clients going for the show off Broadway, and a couple of them had a relationship with either the playwright or the director. So I'm like, you pitch yourself? Oh, I can reach out to casting. Hey, so-and-so has a relationship, already sent their materials to the director or to the writer. I can actually use that in my pitch as well. So it doesn't feel like you only have to just go through me. If you have a relationship with the casting director, with the writer, with the producer, director on the project, I don't think it hurts to pitch. Now, the only thing about that, I know some people who will do the pitch and they don't necessarily have that relationship. So it does get kind of tricky because I do know there are some casting directors that don't like double pitches. So it just depends on who it's with, Or I had one casting director that's like, hey, your client went to the director, everything should go through us, right? So yes, you can pitch, but do know there are some casting offices that don't like that when things are not going through them directly and they're going through the director or the writer. So you just have to be mindful. And television works in a way that they love to filter everything through casting. Yes, you could have a personal relationship with someone on a network television show, but they love to filter through casting. But theater can kind of be a little bit more lenient, but it just depends, because sometimes people can also get rubbed the wrong way if you do that. Not every agent or manager wants you to do that. I don't mind it if you have a relationship with them.
Yes. Yeah.
Heard.
Yeah. So, and to the second part of what I was saying, there clearly is a bit of an art, and there's some inherent risk involved, quote unquote. To use your better judgment. Actually, I told you the story, Mike, but I don't even mind saying who it was. It was Benton Whitley. I said, Rashad, I want to pitch myself for this one project, and I did, and I was in rehearsals for something, and I got the material, and it was no way I was going to be able to get it on tape. And I went to Rashad. He's like, well, now you have to go back and you have to say that you can't do it because you went directly to him. He's like, now it's your problem. And I did, of course. It was just funny because he was like, that's on you now. That's not on me.
And that happens all the time too. I actually had a couple of clients that they actually asked, hey, can you pitch me for this? And I was like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, you want me to pitch you for this? Now you can't do it? So that happens a lot too, right? That happens a lot too in terms of we pitch and then it backfires when we pitch because the client can't do it, So it's tricky. It's a tricky thing. I think when you are doing a pitch, it is important to figure out do you have time to even get in the material? Are you actually perfect 100%. For it? Are you pitching for the sake of pitching? Because some folks will be like, hey, I pitched for this, but hold on, you're not right for that. Why'd you self-pitch for that? So that happens too 100%. In terms of people pitching for things that they're not.
Well, it's always a hard balance too, because I'm not trying to be whatever. I think I can do anything. I really, any material I get, I'm like,
I can see that with those glasses, you're Superman.
Yes.
You're a superhero.
Hello, that's my Noel Coward. Hello there.
Mike, do you watch a TV show? Do you watch a TV show, The Boys? I feel like you could be on The Boys, Mike, with this whole vibe.
My girlfriend is obsessed with that show.
You'd be perfect for The Boys. I'm putting out there in the universe. They got one more season left.
I'll
Pitch
be
it.
handsome man. That'll be my
Work it
superhero,
out.
handsome man.
Work it out.
No, but Guy Fieri, and I'm waiting for the Guy Fieri biopic, the Diners,
Nice.
Drive-ins, and Dives biopic. That's what I'm waiting for. No, but I feel like I can do anything. Like I'm like, oh, I could do that. I could do that, and I am a very versatile actor. And I say this because, but then sometimes. I find that sometimes, not that I over pitch, but I might low key sometimes, and I get a fair amount of auditions self pitching because I don't have representation. But then I'm like, but if you self pitch, you better be fucking perfect for it. That's
Right.
kind of how low key how I feel now. I'm like,
or at least then, Mike, let me dovetail off of that. Then you better be fucking great when you go in.
Because whenever I tape and I'm like, that's really good. But like realistically, is that what they're looking for? You know, I don't know. You know, and sometimes I feel like one thing I can improve on, just hearing you talk about this, is having that conversation with myself, like, you know, Josh, with the show that we were just talking about. Like, you know, I could do it, and I think I would be great for it. But is that really what they're looking for? Are they really gonna, you know? And it's hard, and it's hard because, per your point, like, we need the money now. And we want to work, and you know, it's like, it's wild stuff. It's a fun.
But I think it's important to also just be. I kind of love that you're confident in that way, that like I can do it all. But the reality is, when you watch television shows, when you watch films, think about also who's being cast, right? If they are looking for this specific type of role, who are they actually going to go after? You know, yes, you could probably do it acting wise, but you do have to put yourself in the casting shoes and be like, what's going to make their job easier? What's exactly this? They wrote the description for a reason. If they're saying large man, why would I pitch my client that's 5'5" for the large man? Yes, he could act this part off, but if it says large man, right? So you have to be specific in terms of like those.
If somebody's looking for a large man, me and Joshua will fill. If we got large man. If you come to the Creative Verse podcast. All right, Josh, ask the next question.
Josh is like, speak for yourself. Josh is like, I'm good. I don't know about you.
Hey, thank you.
I'll be beaten after the recording. I will be reprimanded.
Going back to technology, and I just think this is always, and everyone has a unique perspective here on this. What role do you think social media plays in an actor's career today? And just uniquely unto yourself, sorry to keep talking about Rashad and all this, but like, we never talk about social media. Do you talk to your actors about social media as well?
I think sometimes I do. It just depends, because I do know some people they're on social media way too much, or people like to post like the thirst trap photo. I'm like, what are you doing, right? So I will kind of let them know, like, be aware if you're going to have a public profile. Casting will be seeing, producers will be seeing, directors will be seeing. So be mindful in terms of like, what are you communicating by this message? I do feel like pictures communicate something. So I kind of talk to them in terms of like, okay, how can you also showcase who you are, showcase your talent? I actually had a client that got a couple of auditions because people found them on social media. You know, they were posting singing videos or dancing videos. Casting directors will reach out, or a few directors will reach out. Oh, I saw your client on social media, you know, and also on my social media page for my company, I post my clients all the time. So I do have a lot of people in the industry that are also looking at my clients because I'm posting some of their work on my social media. So I definitely think you can actually use your social media to help get your face out there, because there's so many folks online right now. TikTok, Instagram, folks are literally casting talent through social media. So I definitely think you can actually use that as like a tool, you know. So if you don't have a publicist. It's a publicist, basically. Social media is a publicist for you.
Yes.
What's interesting about what you said too, and Josh, I even consider about this when you're taking manager interviews or agent interviews, that's kind of an important consideration. Is, do you have an agent or a manager who's active? Because you posting your clients' clips, look, I don't know. Sometimes, you know, it can feel cringe for us to post our stuff, even though it can lead to opportunities, like you said, for that one person. But if you have a manager who's doing that for you, is another who's advocating for you out there in the ether, that's a great consideration for you know, just for somebody looking for representation. I never even thought about that.
So you do I was rereading your bio actually before we were recording today, and if I'm correct, you do some DEI work yourself for productions. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
That's awesome.
So yeah, they basically hire me as like a kind of like a diversity audience consultant, basically. So if they're doing a show by like a black playwright, they want to really reach out to the African American community. So I actually will reach out to folks and do social media blasts and do email blasts to kind of help get more diverse audiences. I do that for Broadway. I do that for off Broadway, and I think someone wants to hire me for a show in Chicago, even though I don't even know a lot of people in Chicago, but they want me to help
That's awesome.
reach out to audience member and do like audience research there. So yeah.
So, from your perspective, then, what challenges remain when it comes to diversity and inclusion within the industry, and what progress has been made from your perspective?
I think the challenge is that I feel like they reach out to diverse audiences very late in the game. And I feel like we should be talked about from the very beginning, the same way that you're promoting to certain audiences through the New York Times or through some of these press outlets. Like you have to actually like reach out specifically to our community. You know, I think also historically with Black communities, we're also very much word of mouth. So you actually have to be in person, talk to us, and not feel like you have to just send us an email and that's it. For some reason, there's something about our cultures that we want to hear what you have to say. You know, and even now, it's a fascinating thing with Kamala Harris running because they're going to be reaching out to all the communities right now, right? They're reaching out to African American communities, they're reaching out to Latino communities, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be like grassroots organizers reaching out.
Right.
I was on a call actually 2 days ago and had 44,000 Black women from all walks of life on, and we were basically trying to fundraise for Kamala Harris, right?
Wow.
So the same thing with theater and African American audiences and diverse audiences in general, you have to actually talk to us, right? You can't just send us an email or send us you have to like be in the community and letting us know. So I definitely think, you know, we have to be part of that conversation and not feeling like you can just post it online or post it on the New York Times and that's it. So I definitely think our audience has to be like, it's something that you develop. You have to actually invest in us and we'll come to see a show. You just have to invest in us, you know? And even with the Wiz is selling out. You know, I haven't seen it yet, unfortunately.
Why are they
like,
closing it?
Well, they're going on tour. So
But why? But why can't they do both?
Well, that's a good question. I think they want to make. I think it's probably going to be a lot more money to be made on tour than Broadway. Why? Because they're paying a lot of money for these Broadway houses, right? So they actually can make more money on tour and charge Broadway rates. You know, so the reality is they're spending a lot of money keeping on Broadway, even though they're making a lot of money. But with that said, that's an example of how they didn't really need the New York Times. They didn't need good reviews. They didn't need Tony Award nominations, but they came out to the communities. They came out to the Black communities and they did really great jobs in terms of marketing. So with that said, it's one of those things that you have to invest in the audience and not try to talk to us last minute about stuff. That's kind of like
100%.
where we're at right
Well,
now.
that's because it always feels. You're so right. Is that, you know, it feels so much of the time like it's like it's lip service or it's like virtue signaling as opposed to like, well, if you're gonna do it and if you're gonna say that you're about it, then do it. You know, and that's what I really appreciate about that, and it makes complete sense. Final question here. This has been great. And I am really curious to get your thoughts about this because you seem at least, you know, in the interactions I've had with you, very well adjusted. You never know, but you seem that way. What are your thoughts
today?
Today,
Yeah,
exactly. What are your thoughts about mental health, maintaining one's mental health? What does that mean to you? And how do you go about taking care of your mental health?
Yeah, even now, you know, I'm struggling with that now. Like I actually unfortunately just fired my psychiatrist and I need to find a new one. If anyone knows a good psych, let me know. But with that said, I definitely think mental health is important. I think we need someone outside of family and friends to talk to. And even with my clients too, I always recommend therapy. I recommend talking to someone. If you believe in God and have some type of faith system, go to church, go to your synagogue, go to your temple, whatever that is. So I definitely think mental health is important because I know with me personally, if I'm not at a good place, you know, mentally, I'm just not going to be a good place in terms of my business. So I definitely have to try hard to take care of myself. And if I know that I'm getting overwhelmed, you know, I have to like take my walks or take my naps or whatever that is. You know, so I definitely do talk about mental health. I have a couple of clients who they get overwhelmed. You know, they get overwhelmed. And even when they book the job, right? Booking the job actually doesn't mean that everything's gonna be okay. That doesn't mean that like life is good now. But like what's a director like? What's a writer like? Is it, are you working with good cast members? Because even when you get the great job of your dreams, you also could be struggling, you could be stressed out. So I do tell my clients if there are any issues to also talk to me, talk to their agent, or talk to somebody, because I don't want people to feel like they're kind of alone in this. Because I definitely feel like the industry, I think that, I don't know, being an artist, I think it's probably one of the hardest things you can do. I respect what you guys do as actors, as directors, as creators. I know I couldn't do it. I know that if I didn't get a part in high school, I would cry, right? I can't live my life through crying when I don't get roles, right? You guys have to figure out how to actually be strong and take care of yourself when you're not getting XYZ. When, let's say you're not making a certain amount of money or you're not getting the kind of roles that you want to get, you have to also make sure you're taking care of yourself and not, getting diminished. So I definitely think that the mental health thing is important. And I always recommend therapy. I need to find a new therapist. That'll be on my list today because of y'all. Thank you.
Same.
Thanks, guys.
Same. Honestly, same.
Comfort food performances, real quick,
Yes.
Joshua. Yeah.
Wait. Well, let's tell ChiChi about this. So ChiChi, so we end every episode with a comfort food performance, which is a favorite performance of late, a performance we love to go back to time and time again. So I'll kick us off. And then we can each take a turn to name our comfort food performance. Y'all remember The Leftovers, that series from like 8 years ago? Michael, my partner, and I have been rewatching it, or he's watching it for the first time, and I'm watching it again. And I just have to say, I don't know what it is about her, but Ann Dowd is always great. She's always great, just so unique unto herself. But Ann Dowd in The Leftovers is so bizarrely confident and scary and hilarious and kind of heartbreaking. So I'm giving my comfort food performance to Ann Dowd in The Leftovers. ChiChi, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I love anything with Heather Hadley. Heather Hadley is actually one of my favorite all-time musical theater heroes. And I forgot how old I was, but I remember I went to New York with my school to see Aida. Yeah. And that's literally that was my first Broadway musical. And that's actually, I feel like the reason why I'm even working the arts, because I was like, I didn't know how I was going to be, working as an industry person, but I just wanted to be connected to Broadway and connected to people like Heather Hadley's. And I feel like seeing her Aida was very life-changing and affirming. Yes. And also as a Black woman, seeing a Black lead on Broadway, and you don't really get to see that a lot. Even today, there's very few shows that are centering around Black women. But that was just kind of a beautiful performance. I feel like, I could just listen to Aida all day because of Heather Hadley. Yeah.
Okay, well then you've just determined mine, because when I was a kid, I used to make CDs, and it was mainly hip hop. I mainly listen to hip hop. But
okay,
then
Mike, you got street cred?
Where
are you from, Mike?
Yo, Waterbury, Connecticut. Yo.
Go ahead. I didn't know.
That's where the Timex watch was invented. But I would mainly listen to hip hop and stuff like that. But I would always have on each CD one musical theater song, because I did, and on probably most CDs, My Strongest Suit.
Oh, that was a good one.
Sherry Renee Scott. That was literally I'd be listening to the Fugees, or the new Slim Shady LP or whatever the heck, and then it would go to My Strongest Suit, and I'd be like, I'd have to hide it when I'd be out. I'd have to hide it. I'd jam it out on the inside, especially if my father was around. But yes,
so is Sherry Renee Scott?
My Strongest Suit, comfort food performance.
Oh, she killed it. I remember when I saw it, because I actually fell in love with the album before I even saw the show. And I remember being so mad because I guess they had whoever was the replacement for her. I was like, but I wanted Sherry. But the girl was great, though. I forgot who the replacement was. Sure. She was still good. It's a great show.
Well, I saw Brenda Braxton do it. I saw Brenda Braxton, Will Chase, and Lisa Brescia. So I bet you it was Lisa.
Oh, my God.
I saw the replacement cast. I love Brenda Braxton. So she was great. She was great. ChiChi, thank you so much. You're amazing. Check out ChiChi, ChiChiTalentManagement.com.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Just to learn more about ChiChi, she does a lot of career consulting as well. Clearly has the perspective and experience to help all of y'all So please check her out. And thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Creative Risk. If you've enjoyed, please don't forget to like, subscribe here on YouTube, follow our channel, or follow us on your favorite podcast app. A quick review on Apple Podcasts, like we said, would mean the world to us. We read them all, as I said. And if you want to go deeper, join our Patreon community starting at just $5 a month for exclusive content, motivation, and a supportive community. Check out patreon.com/Creative Risk Podcast, and we'll see you next time.